Hey guys, what's going on? Things might be looking a little different. We are in storage, and the Jeep is in storage. So I realized, looking back, I don't think I I swore I recorded one. Maybe I didn't upload it, but I haven't put up a CJ7 update for you guys in 6 months since we completed the V8 4-speed swap. And the Jeep's been through a lot. I've driven it a ton. The V8 4-speed's a lot of fun. Did really well. I did attempt to redo the soft top, the best top soft top that I had on here. And the second time around, it didn't leak, which is surprising because nothing about the soft top changed. So I don't know why it had such a bad leak the first time and acted fine the second time. But I wasn't a huge fan of it. You know, you get a lot of noise, especially from the side windows flapping against the bar. And, in all reality, it isn't that easy to take the top down compared to popping the hard top off. So I do still have it. It's chilling in the back. My brother's using the lower half of the fabric doors as little half doors. But I actually had, I don't remember if I showed it in the last video on the CJ, I might have. I had a YJ hardtop for the Jeep because this one, which is a 79 CJ7 hardtop, it has the typical rust issues in the metal frame on the inside and outside, and it leaks. And then these side windows, which are like rope-in windows instead of the YJs had this just the glue-in windows, they also leak on the bottom. So I gave this to my little brother, let him use it, and I had a YJ top, which worked great. But since the CJ is in storage, I gave it to him for his 91 YJ, so he actually has a YJ hardtop now. And this one will be fine since we're enclosed, so no rain. Interior wise, I've been through a few different seats. It's hard to see, but I had the low back 79 seats front and back, and they were okay, but they were pretty collapsed, so I sat pretty low, and it wound up hurting my my knees, my ankles driving it for a while. And I wasn't a huge fan of the low backs. Being as tall as I am, they would only come up halfway up my back. And while I hope it never happens, if I got rear-ended, I would probably wind up breaking my back. So I went and I actually got a set of YJ seats and threw on these rough country black seat covers. So I have a YJ seat. I had 2 YJ seats and the YJ back seat. And unfortunately, the passenger side seat was a little collapsed on the door side, so I tried shoving foam in there, but also the seat sat a little bit farther this way, and I was rubbing up against the center console, and it was it would hurt my thigh pretty bad after like 10 minutes of driving. So I actually traded these to my brother, and I got my tan best top seats, which I had bought a front and a matching pair for the front for this thing back when I first started building it. and then gave it to him because they sat up high. Well, he wound up wanting the YJ seats, so I swapped both out, and it solves my leg issue. I don't hit the top while I'm sitting in it, but I'm pretty close. I had to take out the sun visor just so I could have a little bit more windshield to look out of. So it's kind of, but I don't have any leg pain, so I will take, having to duck down to see traffic lights over having achy, hurtful legs. But then my girlfriend likes to ride with the seat back reclined, and these are non-reclining seats, so swap the YJ seat in on this side. So now that that story's out of the way on the seats, I don't know why I went so detailed into it, but now you know. I had tried a couple different ways on having radios in here. I had a tape deck from the parts Jeep in here, but the tapes were cool for a little bit, but then you really come to realize how short tape duration is. So I was constantly having to flip tapes, change tapes. So I wanted to get a Bluetooth radio in here, but I didn't want to cut the dash, and I didn't want to spend a ton of money on one of those retro radios. So I tried running a radio in the center console. I tried 2 different radios. I made an extension harness, and it just didn't work. The sound was not good. As soon as I would start getting the volume loud enough to actually hear the radio, it would start crackling and peaking. So I took the radio out. I took the rear speaker pods out. You can't really see them, but I had the 2 speaker pods on the roll bar in the back. Took them out. They would stop the seat from leaning back on this side. That side, the seat was actually pressed up against it, and it cracked it and broke it. And the cup holders on top were useless. You couldn't put anything in there because of the roll bar. So that got ditched. Let's see, what else? I don't think there's anything else that really changed on the interior besides that. Maybe the steering wheel. I don't remember if I had that little shorty steering wheel on when I did the V8 swap, but put that on because with the stock steering wheel, I couldn't really reach the wiper knob very easy. And actually, I think I did have it on there because the other problem is with the stock steering wheel and the full doors, I would not be able to work the clutch. There would be no room. So, but everything else has been working fine. The oil pressure gauge, I did wind up putting a mechanical gauge in it. I do remember the last video I said the stock oil pressure gauge was working, but it was leaking. I tried changing the sending unit. The sending unit was leaking. I tried changing the sending unit, and the oil pressure gauge stopped working completely. So as opposed to trying to find the right oil pressure sending unit, I just put a mechanical gauge in it, ran it down to it's gonna be hard to see in here, sorry guys, but I ran it down and ran it to where the Duraspark oil pressure sensor was. In here, everything's been going good. I did have to rebuild the power steering pump. It was kind of spitting out fluid, and it still is. It's not as bad, but yeah, you can't see it. There's a lot of splatter on that inner fender well. Not as bad as it was, but not 100% solved. But everything else has been going fine. The hood, I did put aftermarket washer squirters in the hood. You know, just drilled a couple holes next to the little windshield support brackets. It looks okay. You know, it doesn't really stand out super bad. So that's always good. The reason I did that, the stock washer squirter there, I was trying to adjust the driver's side because the driver's side was shooting like in front of the windshield. But if you were driving, it would blow back on it. But if you were sitting still, nothing would get on the driver's side. I went to adjust it and it snapped off. So I did try to buy an aftermarket, a repop one of those, and the nozzle, the little squirter hole was like not drilled in the right spot, so it would have been even worse. I think it would have been like shooting below the windshield, and you know, you can't loosen it. Like, it's kind of like you tighten the nozzle and that's it. So I went with this. You know, the stock setup was kind of inefficient anyway. It just put out one stream and then your wiper smeared it. Whereas with these, it fans and mists. So it works a lot better. It was pretty easy to set up underneath. Yeah, you can see that. So, you know, just pulled the hose out from where it went into the tub, and then I cut 1T and it hooks up to both squirters. So that works really well. They were just a cheap universal kit that I got at I think it was Advanced Auto Parts. And actually you can see in the hood all the mist. So it's definitely still leaking power steering fluid. So, but yeah, everything else has been running good. I changed the shackles. Let me go to the back. I changed the shackles. I think they were Fishbone off-road. Yeah, I just put stock ones back in it. I had put Fishbone off-road heavy-duty lift shackles, and I think they were polyurethane bushings that they came with. And I noticed, especially in the front, they were really like kicked out. The driver's side especially was like really kicked out. And, you know, this thing doesn't have that many miles on it. You know, I might have put maybe 2,000 miles on those shackles. And they had, you know, the two bolts for the shackle hanger and leaf spring hanger, but there was a bushing in the middle. I think it was YJ length. I don't remember. I don't think in the instructions it told you had to cut it down, but that bushing was YJ length. And, you know, when I tightened down on the leaf springs, it actually bent the shackle. So that was kind of dumb. And then when I took it all apart, the bushings were all like shot. Like they were wearing through the polyurethane bushing. So swapped out, just put stock shackles back in it, you know, rubber bushings, and it's been good. I could definitely tell it was also riding funny with those wishbone shackles being so bent. Unfortunately, I do think it bent my driver's side front leaf spring in the front. You can't see it, but you know, if the leaf spring hanger's here, the eyelet on the leaf spring should be here, but it's over here. So they're not up and down, it's off to the side. So that's a bummer. The other problem, I had aftermarket shackle hangers front and rear, and these front ones are trash. I'm sure they're Omg Eta, but the eyelet is actually slightly bigger than the bushing. So you put the bushing in there and they can kind of rock around. So add it to the list of repairs. And before we get into that, the carburetor my little Thundermingo Amazon cheapy two-barrel knockoff. It worked, but it really didn't. I mean, I could tell the thing was running super lean, had like no power, and I couldn't do anything to make it any better. So I actually put a two-barrel Holley carburetor on there, and that woke it right up. It's ran way better with that Holley on there. So yeah, so I'm sure possibly you had the thought during this video, well, if you did all this work and it's April, it's getting towards a nice season, why is the Jeep in the storage unit? Why are you not driving it? Well, the simple answer is the Jeep broke. It still ran and drove, but it has some major drivetrain issues. The transfer case, it's not leaving puddles on the ground yet, but the transfer case is leaking pretty good. The transmission, I believe, has had the needle bearings in it go out. When I'm driving, especially in second and third, I get a very random bad vibration in the floorboard, and you can hear grinding from underneath the Jeep when the vibration is happening. And you could feel, if you hold your hand on the shift knob, you could feel there's vibration going on in there, and it gets worse when the vibration happens. But even when it's not acting up, you could feel like the grinding in the transmission, especially when it's under load. When you put the clutch in or coast, it pretty much goes away. So the transmission has to come out. That has to be gone through. And then the engine, while it runs great, it is burning coolant. Sucks, but it doesn't burn super bad. You know, I've just been driving it, checking it, topping it off. And, you know, maybe every month or so, I would need to top the coolant jug off. It doesn't leak when it's not running. And the reason it's leaking is one of the not the front intake manifold bolt, but the second one back on the other side of the water port on the intake in the head. When I was torquing it, that one went from righty-tighty to righty-sussy, and it was about to go righty-loosey. So I didn't actually, and I think that was on like the first pass. So that bolt pretty much isn't really torqued. And, you know, you're like, well, why would you run it that way? Well, I didn't have that much money in this engine. I didn't really do that much to this engine. You know, I changed the gaskets, new timing cover, all that mess, new timing set. But otherwise, you know, it's all stock. Didn't change the head gaskets. Put the stock intake back on it after my Chinese aluminum intake fiasco. So I was just really, and I didn't do anything to the transmission transfer case. So I had zero expectations on this thing. I was like, you know, I'll get in it. This isn't my daily driver. If I drive it a couple times and it blows up, oh well. And with that being said, this thing did way better than I could have expected. I mean, I drove it for, well, 6 months. You know, winter, hot, cold, rain, snow, took it off-roading, drove through the mud. So, you know, this drivetrain overperformed from what I was expecting. So, yeah, we need engine work, transmission work, and transfer case work. I am going to stick with this drivetrain for a few reasons. One, it is cool that, to me, that this is 79 CJ7 drivetrain. And it's cool to me that the drivetrain and the axles and now the hardtop are all from the same Jeep. So it kind of diminishes the Frankenstein cobbled togetherness, because really it's just the body now that's different. The frame is a 79 frame, but obviously from a different Jeep. So I want to keep it for that reason. The other reason, I did look at Chevy swaps. I have a 2016 vintage comp cams thumper cam for a small block Chevy. So pre-coronavirus Chinese metal fiasco that comp cam had, where all their lifters were like prematurely failing on break-in because the metal was bad. And if I would get a Chevy 350, put it in here, I'd have something to put that into. But I don't want to deal with welding Chevy swap motor mounts on here. And the Chevy swap motor mounts that bolt into the factory Jeep motor mount location say that you cannot use the Jeep drivetrain. You have to use a Chevy transmission. I'm sure the transfer case will be fine, but you have to use a Chevy transmission with the Chevy engine. I don't really want to go back to an automatic on this thing. And the SM465s are no better than the T18s. They're literally the same transmission. And I had one in a K20 that I built, but it was way worse to drive than this is. So, and also I would be buying another transmission to have this pretty much the same transmission but Chevy. So we have to do a bunch of drivetrain work, and that's just not something I'm trying to do right now. The fact of the matter is, I got a lot of other stuff going on in my life right now, really going in the right direction, both personally and financially. And right now, taking on the financial and personal burden of doing the work on this thing is just not in the cards. It would just be time and a little bit of money to get the transfer case and transmission sorted. I can rebuild that myself with just a rebuild kit. They're not that expensive. But the engine, I don't know the condition of these heads. I do know that, like I said, we have that bolt, the intake bolt stripped out on that side. We have an exhaust bolt on this side that's stripped out. It stripped the first half of the threads out. I had to put a longer bolt to get it to work. So really, both of these heads need work. The intake needs to go. So really, the engine is going to be another decent chunk of money. I don't, there's no cheap fix this time. So I'm going to probably look at getting new heads, not aluminum, just cast iron heads. The aluminum heads for these are like stupid expensive for no reason. Like I looked at a top end kit for this, which would be, cam, lifters, push rods, rockers, aluminum intake and aluminum heads is like almost $5,000 where for this AMC 304, whereas the same kit for a Chevy small block is like $2,300. So you can get, rebuilt 304 iron heads for $500 each from Willys 4x4. That might not be the right name, but fit $500 a head from them. And then I'm doing this work. I'm gonna put an aluminum intake on it, and actually do a name brand aluminum intake, not try the Chinese route again. Do a 4-barrel, and then if I'm doing all that, I'm gonna put a cam in it. So They have thumper cams for these. I really like thumper cams. I had one in my Pontiac. Obviously, I had one for a Chevy Camaro I had, but I never wound up doing anything with the engine. So I still have that. But I had a thumper cam in my Pontiac that I had in my 70 Le Mans. That thing was sweet. I loved that sound. So if I'm doing this work, I'm going to put a thumper camshaft in it. Thankfully, a lot of the other accessories are new. While the engine's out, might as well also fork over the $2,500 for the Vintage Air AC kit to get that in here and get this piece of shit Jeep Air kit out. And it's just lots of money. New power steering pump. Stop that from spewing everywhere. And I'll have to think of something else with the fans. When I was actually pulling this in here, my brother noticed that it seems like the fan is contacting the fan shroud. And I can't tell that the fan shroud is, warping. So I'll have to see if I can get another fan shroud for this, or maybe do an electric fan. Who knows? But, to be honest, none of this is happening anytime soon. The doors, I am going to be deeply searching hard for a set of 79 twist handle doors. These doors, I don't like. I don't like the claw setup. It really feels like, I just want to be able to click it shut, but you can't do that. You really have to give it some chutzpah to get it to shut. And I actually ran into the soft top. I don't think I had the rails adjusted correctly. They stuck out a little bit too far and they were stopping the door for shutting. So didn't know that at first, so I went to slam it harder, and the passenger side, like a giant chunk of Bondo popped out of the door. And, on the other door, this had been poorly welded and Bondoed over. So in reality, these doors are kind of, but I want to try and find, and they're correct for, a 79, the twist knob doors. That way they're a lot easier to shut. I will have to get creative to make a latch, because when I had the green ones on here, there wasn't a way that they were going to work, which is why I originally ditched them. But now, being where I am now and knowing what I know now, I can just fabricate something to make those latches work. But yeah, none of that is happening anytime soon. So it sucks, but I could keep driving it and risk the transmission blowing up and leaving me stranded, or park it now, fix it later, which is what I'm going to do. So F-250, that's been really kicking it as the daily driver. It's been doing really good. I don't know if I said it in the last video, I changed the fuel tank to make filling the thing with gas possible. Unfortunately, the fuel gauge is still reading wrong. When it says above empty, it's like half a tank. Now at least, it gets below empty. It's probably closer to being empty, but it's still not reading right. So at this point, I think it's going to be the actual fuel gauge. And then just yesterday, I put a spacer, a little thermo spacer under the Edelbrock carburetor that I put in there. The Holly had one, but it had 4 holes and they were all the same size. And the Edelbrock I put on there, the secondary flaps are a little bit larger diameter than the primaries, so the secondaries wouldn't open. So I got rid of it, but was having terrible heat soak issues with it. I would shut it off, get gas, and I would have to, floor it in order to get it to restart. And, park it at the end of the day, go out the next morning, and the fuel bowls are completely empty because it just boils all the gas out of the carburetor. So, and it was running rough. You'd sit at a traffic light and idle, and you could feel like it was kind of running rough, and every once in a while it would really buck and hiccup. So I put a little Amazon, Chinese Edelbrock knockoff spacer on there just because it would come faster than the Edelbrock would from Amazon. And that fixed everything. The idle is much better now, much smoother. It doesn't have any more of that hiccup. And now it does not fuel soak whatsoever. So, looking up on the F250, but still have to do brake work, so we'll probably get an update video on the F250. But as far as the CJ7 goes, this is where it's going to be. This is what it is. So, see you guys on the next one.